Okay, video number one. Well, video number two today. I'm 40 years old. It's time to get rocking and rolling. An introduction to just one of the things I'm covering quite substantially, I suppose, on this YouTube channel, and that is the historicity of Jesus and what Jesus really represented to the early Christians and what Jesus should represent to all of us, all around the world. Everyone of every religion, I think, and all creeds, atheists and so on, should probably know what Jesus represented to those special Christians who actually got what was going on, I think, in the first century. And with a new understanding now that these are beautiful, evolving ideas, the idea of Christ in inner gnosis, his spirit that comes and kisses people sometimes, gives them grand knowledge of who they are, and some kind of strange revelatory, reverberating knowledge that pierces and penetrates all peoples, is really something we're going to be focusing on a lot in these next few videos. So I'm just going to read an introduction as to why it's valuable to just think about the historicity of Jesus at all, whether a person actually existed. And we are going to go through hundreds of pages of information in the next few months and answer the question as to whether he really existed. We're going to weigh the probabilities and look at whether the most watered down version of was there a Jesus, was there a guy, was there even a person called Yeshu or Yeshua, Jesus, who had followers and who was crucified, caused some problems, and then was crucified. We're not going to get into the resurrection because that's extremely hard to prove. It's just unprovable as we know things at the moment. What we're trying to really do is to nail down with reason, rationality and evidence whether there even was a guy, and all of the reasons to dispute that claim. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quick points. This is not going to take long, hopefully about 5 minutes. Let's go. There are 5 points of central importance in the grand old "did Jesus exist" argument. 1. If Jesus existed, he simply had to have been a minor figure, contrary to what the 4 primary accounts of his life seem to say. Any and all pretense at trying to corroborate the generous mixture of fantastical mythological tales replete in the New Testament to the actual archaeological and literary record reveal a massive chasm with next to no primary source information whatsoever. Jesus would have been a virtual non-entity in his time if we equate what history tells us with this figure. 2. Using the Bible to prove the Bible is a crass and ill-conceived exercise in circular reasoning. This is because the information we find in Acts, the 4 Gospels, and the Epistles is contradictory, unsubstantiated, and bears all the hallmarks of being written a very long way from Judea and under the eyes of substantially Hellenized Jewish and otherwise Greco-Roman elites and literary men. I'd say mostly men at that time, people of words, men of words. Poets, people who understood allegory, people who understood how, I'm going off script here, how chiasmus and so on, ring structure, were used in, and mimesis, mimicry of ancient epics was used. And we're going to get into this. It's going to be really interesting because we're going to show you some real revelations that we've only began to discover reasonably recently over the last few decades in Jesus studies. For additional clarity, Luke's gospel never mentions Paul or his epistles and Acts, which is all about Paul. Never mentions Paul ever writing any letters. So for additional clarity, Luke's gospel never mentions Paul or his epistles and Acts, which is all about Paul, never mentions Paul ever writing any letters. Luke and Acts have traditionally been said to have been written by the same person, though. 3. Aside from the Bible itself, the only documentary evidence we have that can definitively be established as even vague non-biblical references to Jesus don't even come from the 1st century. If we now discount a famous Josephine reference, and we shall show why his entries are forged, all mention of Jesus outside the Bible comes to us from the early 2nd century with the arrival of Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, and Suetonius, and these are, as we shall see, questionable. That's a whole series of little lectures in themselves. It's going to be quite interesting. 4. To the point just raised, these references are minor, represent only fleeting commentary, and come to us after Christians and the writings had already been in existence for some decades. What's more, the manner in which they present themselves will now tend towards an interpretation of a more Gnostic, revelatory spirit Jesus than a flesh and blood, literal Jesus of Nazareth. Existence of this is given more comprehensively in St. Paul's Gnostic theology, which is another work, and we'll be going through a lot of that. 5. More intrinsic to and of primary importance to this argument is the fact that absolutely no reference exists anywhere during the time the New Testament says Jesus walked the earth. Jesus is variously identified as a Galilean magus, a messianic king, a prophet, a healer, a Hellenistic sage, a rebel, rabbinical leader, an exorcist, and a demigod, yet nothing contemporary, even with a decent number of contemporary commentators, historians, etc., who trod the very path and meandered on the very beaches of Galilee, cavorting in the same circles of a good deal of persons mentioned in the Bible, have left any trace of anything relating to this man. We only appear to have badly sourced, non-contemporary gospel stories which, when examined closely, give away many signs of mythological storytelling. This is hard to square given the fact that within 200 years, many literalist Christians would have had a concerted interest and went to, we can assume, great lengths to keep and maintain records of Jesus' existence, where we would expect to find far more evidence of Jesus than we currently have. And after 2,000 years of interest and excavation, we have a complete hole. That's the big deal. That's the thing we're trying to work out here, whether we can just attribute Jesus to any other number of mythological characters, Baal, Attis, Dionysus, Apollo, Hercules, and so on, or whether you should take this guy seriously. I know we have a very watered down, most people believe Christ existed, even a lot of scholars, historians today who are secular, believe someone existed. People did exist. Jesus did exist in the 1st century. We'll get into that, but they weren't the historical Jesus at all. The Jesuses that we can say did exist are so far from the Jesus of Nazareth, and the stories concocted about this mythological character are so replete with mythological overlays, and some of them are very characteristic of other pagan deities. I'm sure some people will know that you cannot attribute them to the people who called Jesuses, Yeshus and stuff, that existed in the 1st century. They were not these people. Anyway, I hope we all have a really good time going through this stuff. This is going to be a video probably not seen by many people. I really hope people enjoy these. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in following this research. I've done quite a lot of work on this over the years, so yeah, please stick with me and we'll find some interesting things, I'm sure. in this sojourn down these Gnostic paths. Yeah, hail Gnosis.